Welcome back to Good Morning Interbike. In a pre-recorded segment, recorded the day before the show opened, I'm really honored to be joined by John Burke. John's the president of Trek Bicycles. Welcome to Good Morning Interbike.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, tomorrow morning, and of course, by the time people see this, this will have been in the past. It's sort of this weird time travel that we do. Tomorrow morning, you're going to be keynoting at the Industry Breakfast, which is really a first for Interbike. And you're going to be giving a presentation primarily about advocacy, and I want to talk to you about that. But before we get to it, I think you've become known in the industry, not just obviously for Trek Bicycles, but for some of the presentations that you've given. 2002, you gave a presentation that really was sort of something that was very much talked about in the industry. Remind everybody what you talked about then.
Well, you know, in 2002, gave a speech down in San Antonio, and it's one of my more creative speeches. I came dressed as an old man, and now I don't have to do that anymore because I am an old man. But came dressed as an old man, and I looked at the bicycle business as if we were in 2030. And I made all sorts of, you know, this is how the bike business looks in 2030. And the reason it looked so good is because the bicycle industry got its act together in 2002, and we really understood that the biggest thing that you can do to grow the business in the United States is through advocacy efforts. And I've been a real big believer that there's a lot of things Trek can do to improve Trek's business, but one of the things that everybody can do is if we just go out there and create a bicycle-friendly America, the pie will get really big.
Then you went to the National Bike Summit in 2007, and I was in the audience when you gave that speech, and it was around the time of Al Gore had done his film, An Inconvenient Truth, and your speech everybody called The Inconvenient Truth About Cycling. Tell us about that.
Well, I had never seen Al Gore's speech, so you know, I'm just very passionate about advocacy, and I'm really I kind of put things together where if you take a look at three big trends, if you take a look at environmental issues, if you take a look at congestion issues, and especially here in America, if you take a look at health issues, all right, you got those three things, and the bicycle is a really simple solution to all three of those mega problems. And on top of that, it's cheap. And, you know, to me, no one was really paying attention to it. And that's where I think, from an industry standpoint, and anybody who cares about the bike, we've got this great thing. We just need to work harder.
So what do you see then the challenges are that still exist now 10 years hence from that original, as you call it, the old man speech? What are some of those challenges that are still existing in getting us to your vision of 30?
Yeah, I think one of the good things about the old man speech and the Inconvenient Truth speech is that, and it wasn't just those two speeches, if people understood how many advocates are working around the United States to make America a bicycle-friendly country, and they don't do it for a lot of money, they're the people day in and day out who are doing it. The good news is there's a lot of great stuff that's going on. If you go to Portland and you take a look at Portland in 2000, take a look at Portland today, it's totally transformed. If you go to New York City, which in 2000 didn't have anything going on, and you look at dedicated bike lanes on 9th Avenue, 8th Avenue, 1st Avenue, the stuff that's happening in that city, it's amazing. If you go to Atlanta and take a look at where Atlanta was in 2000, take a look at where they are today, it's still not very good. But they got a great plan to make it better. So there's good news. All right? If we go to your question and we say, okay, what's the bad news or what needs to happen? We've got some headwinds here. And we just lost a real tough fight on Capitol Hill with guaranteed funding for cycling. That's a big blow. And I really think one of the biggest issues we have as a movement is we got to get more people involved. And I kind of take a look back on a good friend of mine and a good friend of the industry's Leslie Bohm just passed away. And Leslie was every bike board meeting. Leslie was at every bike summit. Leslie was a crusader for the bicycle movement. And at one of Leslie's last Bikes Belong board meetings, Leslie went on this monologue about how we needed to get more people involved. And he brought up the NRA as a great example. And I take a look at the bike business and I say, we've got over 500 suppliers in the U.S. market. How many of those people are really doing something to create a bicycle-friendly America? And unfortunately, the answer is not many. There's 150 of those companies who are members of Bikes Belong, and if you really take a look at the people who are pushing it, it's a smaller number. And then we say, okay, there's 4,500 retailers around the United States. And if you take a look at the political landscape today, a small business has a big voice. So how many of those 4,500 retailers really are involved? And that number is a low number. It's below 500. And then I say, okay, well, let's take a look at employees. How many employees are there that live off the land of the bicycle industry? And I say between manufacturers, distributors, retailers, there's 50,000.
Okay.
And out of those 50,000, how many show up at the Bike Summit, or how many work with their local advocacy group, or how many go to that city council meeting? How many people are engaged? It's a low number. And so what I'm going to try and do tomorrow is say, okay, we've got a lot of great stuff done here in the last 10 years, but we got a long way to go. And we need to get our core mobilized. We got to mobilize the believers here, because that should be the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah. Is there something that, as consumers, the folks who are watching, is there something that they can be doing to almost help buoy your efforts, to help convince distributors, manufacturers, dealers to be more involved in bike advocacy?
I think, if consumers are taking a look at supporting companies who are supporting a bicycle-friendly America, and there's some great stories out there of companies who really go out of their way to do it. That's one way, but the biggest thing consumers can do is get involved themselves. Is there are so many people who love the bicycle, and those people care about, do I have more places to ride? Do I have safe places to ride? I mean, that is a huge issue out there today. And if those consumers can just get on the web, search for their local advocacy group, and then just give them a call and ask, how can I help? There's an old football coach for the Giants, Bill Parcells, and he implored upon his players, just do something. All right? And some people are looking for, a 12-chapter book of, what should I do? Let's not make it that complicated. Give those an advocacy organization a call. Ask them how you can help.
What's interesting is when I saw you at the Bike Summit that year, it was my first Bike Summit. And it energized me towards advocacy, and you were certainly part of that. But just understanding that it didn't matter how much or how little I did, as long as you said, I did something, as long as I was involved and understood that there are issues everywhere throughout the country. And as you said, sometimes positive and sometimes negative. And so I think for consumers, knowing that just doing a little bit can really make a difference.
It's huge. If you take a look at the government, we live in a democracy. But the reality of it is that it's a democracy of the people, for the people, and by the people who show up.
Yeah.
And if you want to have your voice heard, you have to speak. That's the reality of our democracy. And when you get people who want safe places to ride their bicycle, there will be safe places to ride your bicycle. But you have to ask. If you don't ask, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I used to live in Southern California, and in Los Angeles when I would ride there, was not incredibly positive.
Right.
You go back today, you've got a mayor who's a little bit more engaged when it comes to bicycles, and all of a sudden, riding in Southern California is a lot better now.
It's a lot better now, and there's a plan in Los Angeles to add something like 1,000 miles of new trails over the next 5 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? But the way that didn't happen by accident. There's a great story. The mayor of Louisville is all of a sudden he decided to get involved in cycling and start to develop cycling in Louisville. The reason he did that is he was in Colorado, he was in Boulder, he was in a couple other cities, and he saw what was happening. So now people are going to end up going to Los Angeles. They're going to see really cool stuff, and it's going to start to happen all over.
Absolutely.
That's what's happening in America. Is everybody used to just talk about, well, it's Boulder and it's Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, yeah, whatever. Right? Well, now it's Boulder, it's Davis, it's Portland, it's San Francisco, it's Madison, it's Chicago, it's New York City, it's Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
I wonder if you've thought about this. Some of the cities you mentioned have bike share programs.
Right.
I wonder whether the fact of just tourists going to Washington, D.C., using Capital Bike Share as an example, then going home to their local community and saying, why did I feel so good riding this rental bike in D.C., but I come home to Anytown, USA, and I don't feel that way? I wonder if in some ways that helps fuel some of the improvements and some of the advocacy.
Well, I think one of the great lessons in Paris, they put in the Vélib system, and what they did is they not only put 20,000 bikes on the street, but almost in a 3-month period, they built all this infrastructure, which really there's a couple lessons there. One is, if you really want the infrastructure done, you can do it. Because they did it in Paris in a short period of time.
Yeah.
It can be done. All right? And the other, lesson is if you build it, it will be used. And in Washington, D.C., they built it. There are places to ride your bike. I think we'll see more and more of that.
So as we think about wrapping up, what does 2030 look like?
To me, 2030, when you judge success or failure here, is I think you really got to take a look at trips taken by bicycle. All right, that's a measurement that's used around the world. We're talking about going to a restaurant. We're talking about going to work. We're talking about going to school. We're talking about going to the ball field. That's a trip. How many of those trips are taken by bike? In Denmark, it's 35%. In Holland, it's 25%. In Germany, it's 12%. In Switzerland, it's 9%. In the UK, it's 3%. In Canada, it's 2%. In the United States, it's 1%. Lame.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well put.
All right? For all the progress we've made in the last 10 years, and it really is amazing, 1%. Okay? And so to me, I really think when we're sitting here having this conversation, and I say 2025, it's 5%. Okay? It needs to be 5%, and we've got to rally the troops. Anybody who cares about the bicycle, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, consumer who loves their bike. If you want to see a bicycle-friendly America, we got to get people engaged, we got to get people mobilized, and we can make a difference. 5%.
And just do something, right?
Just do something.
That's it.
Yep, that's it.
John, pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking the position you have and using it to help mobilize people who care about bikes.
You're welcome. And the lesson there is I'm fortunate where I'm the president of a large company in the bike business. Leslie Bohm was the president of a small company in the bike business. We both put in the same amount of effort. The message here is everybody counts.
That's it.
All right?
Go do something. 5%. That's what we're looking for. John,
great.
Pleasure to see you.
Thanks for
joining
having me.
us.
All right.
We'll be right back with Good Morning Interbike.